In the early 2000s, a radical school of neo-fascist thought began to emerge in online forums. Its proponents called it the Dark Enlightenment. But this was no celebration of reason or progress. This was a rejection of democracy, of equality, of everything the modern world was built on. These thinkers believe society has rotted, that liberalism has failed, that democracy should die, and in its place, rule by the few, the rich, the brilliant, the ruthless, tech CEOs as kings. Welcome to the update no one asked for. The American state, overgrown, outdated, unresponsive, has struggled to adapt to the speed of modern life. Agencies clash, courts stall, good ideas die in congressional gridlock.
Because we keep hearing that 2014 has been the warmest year on record. I asked the chair, you know what this is? It's a snowball.
While career politicians, shaped by a different century, debate endlessly just to keep the lights on. Reform feels impossible, progress even harder. Curtis Yarvin, a San Francisco-based computer programmer turned philosopher, believed it was time to change this system, along with many others on the right and the left. But his remedy was something else entirely. Where others saw a need for transparency, he called for control. Where others wanted more participation,
you guys gonna register to vote?
He demanded silence and obedience. To him, democracy isn't worth saving. It's software past its end of life. So he proposed a reboot, a clean install of absolute authority. One man at the top. No checks, no balances, just efficiency. Yarvin's vision erases what little remains of accountability. It replaces the messiness of democracy with the precision of command. It doesn't fix the system. It replaces it with a throne. Yarvin and his followers didn't just critique democracy, they called for its end. Not by breaking the system, by using it, turning its openness against itself, and letting it collapse under the weight of its own rules. In their eyes, democracy is outdated software, bloated, slow, vulnerable to corruption, incompetence, and mob rule. Their solution? Replace the system with one that works more like a machine, a CEO instead of a president, citizens as customers, power concentrated, not debated, stability over participation, efficiency over freedom. For years, these ideas were dismissed, buried in blogs, circulated in obscure forums. But now, piece by piece, the world they imagined is being built. Not someday, now. Every revolution needs architects. This one had billionaires. They didn't wear uniforms. They didn't need parades, just venture capital and code.
Who are the PayPal mafia, and how are they linked to apartheid-era South Africa?
Well, they're a group of men who are at the top, the founding of PayPal, all of whom in some way or other grew up in South Africa as children. You've got Musk himself, who was born in South Africa and lived there, went to high school there until he was 18 and then moves to Canada. You've got Peter Thiel, who was a co-founder with Musk of PayPal. Thiel was born in Germany but brought to South Africa as a young child. He went to school in Swakopmund, which was notorious as probably the last place on the planet where people still openly greeted each other with Heil Hitler and celebrated Hitler's birthday. He went to a German school there. You've got David Sachs, who was born in Cape Town. He's big in PayPal and is now Trump's AI and crypto czar, and they all have this very intimate connection to South Africa.
Founders, financiers, philosophers of a new order, not satisfied with building tools. They began building realities where the market decides morality, where governance is streamlined, privatized, and insulated from the chaos of democracy. They didn't all say it out loud, but one of them did. Peter Thiel wasn't just another tech investor, he was the movement's philosopher. While others built platforms, Thiel built doctrine. In 2009, he wrote, "I no longer believe that freedom and democracy are compatible." It wasn't a provocation. It was a mission statement. Thiel began pouring millions into causes and candidates that shared his vision. A world where the strong don't negotiate with the weak, where governance isn't a public service, but a product.
Well, his background ideologically is all over the place. He has stated that democracy and freedom are incompatible. He's said that women should have never had the right to vote in the United States. He believes in the construction of man-made islands where the U.S. government has no sovereignty, and now he's a Trump delegate.
And behind the scenes, he kept in close contact with a man whose ideas most people have never heard of, but whose fingerprints are now all over the American state.
France, you're like, hey, France, our empire's over. And by the way, France, if you want your colonies back, that's between you and them. Algeria, lovely beaches. You can have it. Used to be part of your country. We stole it. You want it back? You can have it. You'll probably have to do some fighting.
Curtis Yarvin doesn't hold office. He's never led a protest. But few minds have done more to undermine American democracy from the inside.
Curtis Yarvin is a software programmer from San Francisco who in the early 2000s started writing a weird blog under the name Mencius Moldbug. And in that blog, he outlined a lot of these ideas for getting rid of democracy in favor of a corporate monarch or dictator and running territories instead of by government, by corporation. For example, his idea for San Francisco was something called FriskCorp, which would be a corporate-run San Francisco where you need a special card to swipe it and swipe out. At every moment in FriskCorp, you're under constant and total surveillance. They know every single thing you're doing, even if you're in your house. And this is what guarantees the safety of the populace. Of course, he's only reinvented the totalitarian government of Orwell's 1984.
His message was simple. Democracy is a failed experiment, and the only way forward is to shut it down. Dismantle the agencies, fire the bureaucrats, abolish the vote, then reboot the country under a single, powerful executive, a CEO of America. For years, his ideas were confined to obscure blogs and fringe forums. But then something changed. Peter Thiel invited him in, and others began to listen, including an author, CNN contributor, and venture capitalist who was about to launch his first political campaign. J.D. Vance didn't start out as a reactionary. He was a Marine, a Yale law graduate, and for a time, a best-selling author with a foot in two worlds. But something pulled him deeper. He began quoting Yarvin, following anonymous reactionary blogs, praising monarchist ideas, half joking and half not. In podcast interviews, he spoke of a government that should be dismantled, not reformed. Bureaucrats fired, agencies shut down. The kind of ideas that once lived only in Yarvin's essays were now being echoed by a candidate for the U.S. Senate. And not just any candidate, one backed by Peter Thiel. Handpicked, financed, positioned. Today, that candidate is Vice President of the United States. And the words that once sounded like fringe theory are now shaping the executive branch. Thiel's candidate had reached the observatory. Now, it was time for another name from the PayPal mafia, the most visible one, to move into the spotlight.
Yarvin Yarvin's idea is that Americans have to get over their dictator phobia, he said. And the way that we do that is by installing a CEO to be like the shadow president and to destroy American government from within through something he calls RAGE, R-A-G-E, retire all government employees. And that's very much what you see happening right now through DOGE, Doge, destruction of government by Elon, in Washington as we speak.
Elon Musk was never elected, but today he wields more power than most world leaders. He controls the platform where politicians speak, the satellites that carry their data, and the narratives that shape their image. He didn't seize power. He built it, not with armies, but with startups. To his followers, he's a genius, a savior, a symbol of progress. To others, he's something darker, erratic, unaccountable, and increasingly aligned with forces hostile to democracy. He mocks regulators, amplifies conspiracies, meets with autocrats, and now he's no longer just on the sidelines. He's been invited in by a returning president, desperate to fix the government by dismantling it. Elon Musk has been given a new role, one that doesn't require a ballot, just permission and the tools to execute. In 2025, a new office was created, not by Congress, not by law, by executive order. It was called the Department of Government Efficiency. Publicly, it promised reform, savings, streamlining, simplicity, but behind the acronym was a wrecking crew. Its mission: shrink the federal government, not budget by budget, but agency by agency. And at the helm was Elon Musk. No title, no confirmation hearing, just access. He was given authority to evaluate every department and eliminate what he called redundancies. Within weeks, offices were shuttered. Career staff were pushed out. Entire websites vanished. A startup mindset applied to the machinery of the state. Musk wasn't reforming government. He was rewriting it. The effects weren't hypothetical. They were immediate. Within weeks, Doge teams began appearing inside federal agencies, not as consultants, but as executioners. At the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, employees were told to stop working. Entire offices were locked down, without explanation. At USAID, the government's primary humanitarian agency, global relief operations were frozen. Staff overseas were left stranded. The agency's website went dark. No warning, no debate, just silence. Lawsuits followed. Whistleblowers stepped forward. But by then, the work was already being undone, program by program, position by position. Career civil servants were told to justify their jobs or lose them. Entire departments were labeled inefficient. But despite all the tough talk about cutting waste, the federal government had actually been spending money faster since Trump took office than it did over equivalent periods in 2023 and 24. Still, Elon Musk's new agency had become what it was always intended to be: a rebranded, repackaged version of Yarvin's Retire All Government Employees plan, RAGE. To Yarvin, the real power in America didn't reside in government offices. It lived in something he called the cathedral, a distributed network of institutions, universities, mainstream media, civil service bureaucracies, all speaking with one voice, not coordinated by design, but aligned in worldview. Liberal, progressive, self-reinforcing. He believed this invisible consensus shaped public opinion, dictated social norms, and quietly ruled from behind the facade of democracy. So he declared war on it. But while Yarvin and his followers fixated on dismantling the old cathedral, something else happened. It collapsed on its own, not by revolution, but by replacement. In its place, a new one emerged, less hierarchical, more chaotic, shaped not by credentialed elites, but by influencers, meme accounts, live streams, and algorithmic virality. The professors were replaced by podcasts, the news anchors by reaction streamers, the op-ed by the tweet. Authority fractured, and in its place came volume. Truth became optional. Narrative became everything. And into this noise stepped the perfect ideology, one that doesn't seek common ground, but thrives in confusion. Yarvin's ideal was a CEO king, an executive who doesn't persuade, he decides, detached from the whims of the crowd, immune to public pressure, a stabilizing force in a chaotic age. But the crown didn't land on a philosopher.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Donald Trump wasn't what Yarvin had in mind, but he fit the role too well. He governs not with efficiency, but emotion. Not with restraint, but retribution. He threatens the media, calls for judges to be silenced, pledges to imprison political rivals, not out of strategic calculation, but personal vengeance. Still, the architecture was ready. The pathways had been carved, and in Trump, Yarvin's blueprint mutated. What began as a theory of order became a tool of wrath. And the power to destroy institutions wasn't theoretical anymore. It had a name, a following. And once the update completes, a throne that answers to no one.